In this video, we are going to talk about the 2003 movie Wrong Turn. We will discuss the movie story, summarize its plot, and we will also talk about the box office performance of the movie. We will review the movie and share personal reactions. So let's begin. The movie is directed by Rob Schmidt, written by Alan B. McElroy, starring Eliza Dushku, Desmond Harrington, Julian Rings, and Jeremy Sisto. I did some thinking. I said to myself, hey, you are more than a once trick pony. How about we talk about something other than horror? Other films exist. And I was like, okay, let's watch some thrillers then. And while I scroll, thought Netflix and Amazon choices of anything but horror, I somehow kinda accidentally clicked on a horror genre that I had always avoided called Wrong Turn. You may be wondering why I avoided it since 2003. Well, personally, I was busy and I am not a creature feature kind of gal, and the idea of weight deformed mountain folk trying to eat people in the desert, mountain, other large areas, phrase of humans just as we fit a little overplayed and dull, there is a little substance, and we have seen it time and time again since The Hills Have Eyes came out. But with its upcoming remake releases, Amazon was doing a good job pushing it into my feed until I gave in a click play. Wrong Turn tells the story of a Chris who is running late for an important job interview, and when he is faced with a highway gridlock, he heads into the back roads and ends up smashing into the only other car on the road ever way to go. Chris, with those observation skills, I hope you don't get the job. He decides to jump up with these other peeps as they head into the mountains to look for some help. But it's not long before they realizes their accident was not so accidental and they are being singled out by a bunch of cannibalistic Hannibals. Cue banjo solo now. Now, normally I would have checked out, but Wrongton had a level of class in regards to the execution of the whole affair. The opening credits are the only clue we have to Hannibal's desire to eat humans for most of the film, and it's not until the end of the movie that we find out that they are resistant to pain. We don't ever see them enough for us to find them silly. We are constantly in the position of the victim, running from the Hicks and seeing them at a distance, keeping us the viewer kind of in the dark and truly creating a sense of realism to a somewhat silly idea. In a sense, like Chris and his new pals, we have no idea what these badly dressed mountain folks want from us. Wrongton gave us suspense by the bucket load the Hannibals stalk silently blending into the hillside, knowing every area, always giving them the upper hand over their victims. We see the road in the distance only to have them drag us away. We hold our breath as we hide in the closets as the Hicks move around us. And although as I started, hillbilly cannibal killers is not my bag. You cannot deny the energy and viewing player that brings to my horror flick. Basically, if you are not holding your breath with them or screaming run as they dart away from the killer, then you are watching a bad movie or you are a robot. This film gave me a lot more enjoyment than I had ever expected, and I am the sort of person who cannot admit when I am wrong. So much so, I wish I had seen this film sooner, and maybe my lack of faith, if you will, in what Wrong Turn was going to provide me is what allowed me to really love every element of it. These kind of films are not there to be taken seriously. It's Hannibal's who wanna eat people. You're not really dealing with a Cannes film submission here, and with that in mind, it's hard to not enjoy it for what it is. A film that lives to cash in on the teen slasher flicks of the late 90s, early 2000s, and I am all about it. Slather me in mud and send me into the hills because outrunning those hikes seems like a fun team building exercise. Now, there are like a million sequels apparently, and number two has punk rock singer Henry Rollins it, so that's gonna be a riot. Maybe I will not do them all, as apparently they get rather awful, but she cannot keep me from Mr. Rollins. His dead pan face acting style is erotic as best. Are she mad or sad? I cannot tell. So, what we have learned this week, the mountain have secrets, doctors are unabundant, and Hannibals have the worst fashion taste. Wrong Turn 2003, directed by Rob Schmidt, and the budget of the movie is $12.6 million, and it hit at the box office with $28.7 million. IMDb 6.1 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes are 40%. I remember liking this movie when it first came out on video. Back in the days when we went to the video store, walked the walls, and picked movies based on the picture on the front of the box. If you were born after 2000, you almost surely have no idea what I'm talking about. The whole video store rental market went downhill right about the turn of the century, so you younger people never got to experience the madness of rushing to the video store on Friday evening to get to the new releases before they ran out. You don't know the agony of being put on a wait list for a movie to be returned, and you certainly don't know about Be Kind Rewind and the penalty fee that came along with that if you were not kind nevertheless. It was a whole experience back in the day, unlike today where just about any movie you want in at your fingertips in digital format somewhere. Watching this film again took me back to those days. It almost reminded me how young everybody looked back then. I saw Jeremy Sisto and immediately thought of his Shamoko character in that annoying movie Clueless. Please insert a double, no triple eye roll here for one of the most airhead movies of the 90s. But then I also thought of him in Suicide Kings, equally as big of a summit but a lot better movie. This film is about a group of people around their early 20s, maybe a couple about 90, and they get in a car accident with each other. Four of them group together to go to look for a phone, and while two stay behind to wait at the cars. They soon find it out that being wrecked and stranded on an abandoned dirt road out in the middle of the nowhere is as creepy as it sounds, even creepier. Soon they are assaulted by three men. If you can tell them that, I guess by scientific definition they would have to be classified as human, but these creatures are definitely not like the average every people are even the average everyday killer. These guys are the epitome of the inbred, backwards, no teeth, psychiatric killer you see and hear about only in horror movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and, well, this movie. They don't even speak English, they just make wide whooping noise and awful sounds that could make your stomach run. If they were not so violent and ugly, you would think that they were just a typical depiction of village idiots living in the woods, but these guys are like psychopathy on crack. Now, all they have to do is survive. There are some really good kill scenes in this movie. The special effects are decent and the action is pretty constant. I will admit that at about an hour in, I looked at the counter to see how much time was left on the movie because it was a slow spot in the film, and I'd say the first 15 minutes or so, like any other film, can be a little slow too. But there is some light comedy, more like sarcasm in the beginning, so that helps. The acting is good, but honestly, the best are the killers freak. They really grab hold of the roles and don't let go. And their makeup is truly grassitudes. I mean, if there was ever an ugly villain contest, these guys could take first prize easy. All in all, definitely worth watching, and I am glad I own it. It will be one I watch again. 5 star out of 6. Wrong Turn 2003 never felt so right. 20 years retro review. Yes, the early August slasher, chock full of underdeveloped character and horror clicks with the dissenting script. I ate them up 20 years ago. The birth of the Wrong Turn franchise graced us with its presence. It's a fall under a funsome genre of horror vacations gone wrong. Plus, you cannot miss the deformed cannibal Hannibalese. Wrong Turn is a 2003 slasher film directed by Rob Schmidt, crime preparation 2000 and written by Alan B. McElroy. The film stars Desmond Harrington, Emmanuelle, Chriqui, Jeremy Sisto, and Kevin Zegers. Carol Flynn is driving through the country road of West Virginia on his way to a job interview. Due to a chemical spill on the road, he is forced to find a different road. Chris stops at a rundown gas station and meets an old man. The elderly, toothless hillbilly gives him direction to another road, then shows Chris a map detailing where to go. Chris speeds to make up lost time, then takes his eyes off the road and bashes into the back of a Range Rover with flat tires on the dead path. The car belongs to a group of friends on their hiking trip: Jessie, Carly, and her fiancé Scott, and a couple, Yvonne and Francine. They first rush to Chris' aid and they realize both cars are totaled. Jessie finds a piece of barbed wire in the woods that was tied to a tree across the road after their tire was punctured on their Range Rover. She grows suspicious, but not enough to stop her from entering the woodsy back road for help on foot. Carly, Scott, and Chris join her while the Harney couple stays with the car. As Chris, Jesse, Carly, and Scott try to find help, they find a dilapidated cabin. They go inside the rundown luggage and discover miscellaneous objects: barbed wire, car keys, tourist souvenirs, and oh yeah, human body parts in the refrigerator and in the bathroom. They begin to panic and try to escape, but they see the homeowners pulling up driving a tow truck with their Range Rover hitched to the back, and they are forced to hide. Three sinister, disfigured mountain men enter the cabin and bring in Franchise's dead body. Chris, Jesse, Carly, and Scott silently watch in horror as her body is butchered and partially eaten. As the cannibals take a quick daytime nap after their raw flesh snack doesn't seem sanitary, the friends attempt to sneak out and reach to the door but to no avail. When one of the distressed cannibals wake up, they make a mad dash for their lives through the woods, hoping to make it out alive. Wrong Turn is aimed at the hearts of 1970 nostalgia, resembling Texas Chainsaw and The Hills Have Eyes and featuring a fun, airy atmosphere. Throughout the movie, you get the uncomfortable feeling that the characters are being watched by someone. It's a classic slasher viewing experience that holds my attention and keeps me coming back to witness another gruesome death. Shot and directed with an atmospheric color palette, a fair amount of tension, some grisly kills, and lots of quick nervous cuts. Wrong Turn held where most other horror the fall into the same subgender fail. The arcs were a time of slasher that were all about irony and smartry. Wrong Turn vastly include neither. Not to say it doesn't get a bit campy with cheesy dialogue, but that's part of the fun is being a fan of the gender. You can even spot a blood pumping tube device in the death by arrow scene when a victim hits the ground. it makes me smile, and I know I am in the right place. Wrong turn final thoughts. Wrong turns use a recycled plot that's been used a few hundred times before, which makes the experience predictable. The gore was abundant, and the film delivered it with in your face style, which kept me interested. The acting is on par with early 2000 slasher flick, which is good enough to get the point across. Overall, this is mildly recommended to slasher fans or anyone who wants to gawk at Eliza Dushku for a little over an hour. Wrong Turn had its heart set in the right place, and I found it to be an entertaining waste of time. You can watch it anywhere. Wrong Turn, the movie released in 2003, and it is a slasher horror film. The movie released in 2003, and in the 2000 horror found itself at something of the crossroad, having been fairly dormant at the box office for most of the 90s. The self-aware snark of Calling Williamson's script and the mere direction of Wes Craven had made the Scream had virtually brought an entire genre back into the game overnight. However, things come full circle in movies and almost as fast as they can into Vigo, and as the smug meta slasher film started to sputter to a halt, the same old question rang out: what's next? The good news was that a move back to the gratitude of the 70s was next on the agenda. The bad was it mostly was in the form of a large amount of splashy remakes, which gave older horror fans a rather nasty case of deja vu, but lurking somewhere between the cracks lay a movie that was both a new slasher that was not a remake, but that strives to invoke the harsher age of movies such as The Hills Has Eyes, which ironically brought us back to Craven again. The movie was strong turn, but was it a right one of the gender in desperate needs of new ideas? Medical student Chris Flynn is diving through the mountains of West Virginia in order to get to the type of business meeting that these days could be cleared up in a 15-minute Zoom call. But after running into a snare of immovable traffic, he is forced to weigh up his options, wait in traffic, and be late while listening to his Queens of the Stone Age CDs or drive back the way he came and try to win and alternate route. Josh Fan will be upset to learn he chooses the latter, but after discovering of another road from the type of rundown gas stations you tend to get in movies like this, he takes his new turn, blissfully unaware that he has taken a wrong turn. Before you know it, he is crashed into the parked car of a bunch of college students who themselves got into trouble due to a puncture caused by some suspiciously late reservoir. No one is hurt in the crash, but Chris volunteers to head off with Tom by Jesse, Brian Box Scott, and his girlfriend Carly, while the flakier Ivan and Franchine stay to watch the car and possibly have if the mood calls for it. However, it doesn't take long for them to realize their respective trips have hit a definitive dead end when they discover that they are being stalked by a trio of misshapen inbred mountain men that each go by the charming monikers of Three Finger, One Eye, and Sawtooth. To make matters worse, Virtue think this could get better is partially true, or rather partially to human flesh, and well stops to nothing until his attractive flusher of potential cold cut are in little piece and bubbling in a stew. As more of the students fall before axes, arrows, and other panty weapons of survival, the ones who are left have to figure out how to beat these disfigured bags at their own game. It's funny how time distorts the memory. Back in 2003, when I first saw Wrongdown, I had it initially pegged as something of a breath of fresh air that, yes, it was filmed very much in the same mock gritty style as Marcus Nipple's Texas Chainsaw Scare make the raid into cinemas the exact same year. and just it features the same type of impossibly attractive youth you'd get in a Scream movie with all the female character kitted out in some form of push-up, crop, and rider jeans combo just for good measures. Yet while there are unavoidable comparisons to be made with the after-mentioned The Hills Have Eyes and Texas Chainsaw, what you think mutant cannibal families grow on trees or something, the fact that Wrongtown was not a sequel, a remake or swat full of knowing wisecrack seems to be something of a step forward for a gender that seems to revel in cocking round and round while savaging its own tail. However, after over 20 years since its release, a more modern level high viewing exposes it as possible one of the most derivative and cliche-trident horror movies of the decade, which ends up somehow being less innovative than most the frequent remakes that continued to pop up like weeds of the rest of the decade. The cast, while attractive in a sweetie, hip kind of way, are the usual kind of one-dimensional victim fodder that slasher survivor flick have always fallen back on. It's just these guys seems a bit more poorly because their fashions and slang is newer than the stuff we got in the 80s. However, it certainly helped that the film has hired a better breed of actor with the likes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Eliza Dushku talking the lead role, but it's kind of scandalous when her character's sole defining trait seems to be that she is being played by Eliza Dushku. However, we don't even get the ass-kicking faith version of Dushku, and watching her play a more passive role whose most memorable lines of dialogue contain such zingers as "Get off me," "Let me go," and that old favorite arc. There seems like a waste of the charismatic, spunky actress elsewhere. Jeremy Sisto plays his affable buffoon somewhere in the region of a young Jeff Goldblum, which helps grease the wheels when you consider that Desmond Harrington uncomplicated lead in Vanilla as a Mr. VP. Of course, matters just a bit once we swing our attention over to the movie's villain, and it's probably no surprise that special effect legend Stan Winston is present as a producer, considering how well thought out the trio of antagonists really are. While the trippage of three finger, sawtooth, and one eye may not be instantly as iconic as the many variations of the Chainsaw Clan or the Hills family, they still prove to be an intimidating bunch who display more character thanks to the little detail that the entire normal cast do with a script full of dialogue. Without being told or looking up on a villain wiki or whatever, it's fairly obvious that the hulking sawtooth is the older bro who is more measured, while the Jacqueline Threefinger, who went on to become the franchise poster boy in the endless sequel, is the gabbish babbling white card, and One Eye is the axe fingering brute. While there's an intriguing air of mystery about these guys who exactly was going around teaching 2000 horror villain how to drive rusty trucks, you can tell that's the rather innovative kills that really hooked director Rob Schmidt as Strongton pulls out some impressive stops to get the blood flowing freely. But it is a spot of razor wire in the mouth or a freshly dissipated head setting snubby on the X blade that just separated it from its body or some devilishly accurate archery. The kills and the set pieces that lead up to them are energically throughout our with a scramble through the treetops being nicely memorable. Hardly a game changer despite the fact that the sprawling sequel, prequel, and remakes that sprawled out of its wake might suggest otherwise. Wrong Turn is something of a right turn if you are looking for animating thrill or plentiful spills of crimson life blood, but anyone hoping for anything new might find the road ahead closed. Wrong Turn, how does the survival horror movie hold up 21 years later? May of 2003, the movie name is Wrong Turn, is released. So let's review it. Wrong Turn is a blast from the past, but was it a blast to watch it? It is what it is. It's a guilty pleasure horror movie that features psychiatric, inbred mountain men. If that sounds like your bag, give it a watch. Regardless, listen to our review because we probably had more fun viewing it than watching it. Wrong Turn synopsis. The synopsis is simple. A group of random people in their early 20s are attacked by inbred homicidal mountain men. Some of them have paid by number backstories and archetypes. Really, their purpose and motivation is to be fooded for slasher. Everyone that you think will die dies, and everyone that you think will survive survives. Wrong Turn came out in 2003 and I generally forget how long ago that was. Nokia phones bear midriffs on women and puka shells on men. It was a simpler time and this is a simple movie to watch it. This is a good old-fashioned dumb slasher. The only unique twist on the generic formula is that the antagonists are a family of inbred homicidal hikes. Oh wait, that's not unique. That's a trip-off of Texas Chainsaw Scare. Whatever, who cares? The people that went to watch slasher just want to see people getting chased and cut up. In that respect, this movie exists because that's basically all that happens. People get chased and cut up, rinse and repeat. About Bar Jackson is a big fan of the horror genre. Wrong Turn, another movie about mutant inbred cannibals. Already, yes, it seems impossible, but here is Rob Sam Staunton arriving barely 1 month after Rob's zombie house of 1000 corpses, a negative pickup by Fox, dumped into theater on Friday without benefit of press previews. Wrong Turn is steeps only in frightless torpor. Another movie about mutant inbred cannibals. Already yet it seems impossible, but here is Rob Sacred Wrongton arriving barely 1 month after Rob Zombie's House of 1000 Corpses and crying with it a similarly cautionary ecological message about the dangers of trekking off into the woods unawares, and thaw its substitutes for the likes of Sid Haig and Karen Black, a fresher-faced cast of 20-somethings led by Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Eliza Dushku. The clear ambition here is to recapture the raw, explosively violent atmosphere of such hallmark 1970s shockers as The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Has Eyes. Nice try but no cigar, a negative pickup by Fox, dumped into the theater on Friday without benefit of press reviews. Our much of an ad campaign Wrong Turn is steeps only in frightless torpor from beginning to end of its 84 minutes. Audience will wisely steer clear of this wreck. What one wonders would John Denver have to say about this premise? A med student driving through West Virginia en route to a job interview in North Carolina crashes his car into a van belonging to a contingent of vacationing vampires who have themselves been run off the road after puncturing their tires on a barbed wire snare. Only that snare was not placed across the road by accident. It belongs to the after-mentioned family of flesh eaters credited but never identified as Three Finger, One Eye, and Sawtooth that dwells in them their hills and eventually, like the family in Corpus, runs a car towing service as a front. Of course, our libidinous heroes and heroines Guy Scott and Yvonne Gertz, Jesse, Carly, and Francine don't realize this just yet. It only becomes apparent following an unduly slow, partition sequence in which two-thirds of the group sets out in search of help. Yvonne and Francine stay behind to get it on, which is of course a big no-no in movies like these, and stumble upon an isolated cabin that seems like a warehouse of cautiously cheesy horror movie set dressings. Inside, there are dilapidated dolls, knives, and axes decorating the walls, and human body parts floating in the bathtub. Yet, it seems to take everyone a really long time to decide they would get the hell out of here. At this point, screenwriter Alan McElroy more or less checks out, leaving Sekhmet to put Wrongton through a series of anticlimaxes in which the youth are chased through the woods by the cannibals, with the home team slowly but surely battering the odds until it's down to just two preppy white kids versus three latex costumed gazelle possessors of seemingly superhuman strength and speed. And then there are two long set pieces, one in a windowless watchtower and other back in the creepy cabin, both of which are so poorly shot and edited that it's nearly impossible to tell what's going on. One might wonder that makes Strong Turn so much worse than something like Victor Salva's equally derivative Jeeper Creeper, in which similarly naive youngsters and themselves being pursued through inhabitants driven by a malevolent creature. Simply that Selva showed an obvious affinity for and understanding of gender mechanics. Creepers were creepy is really know how to work the audience, how to make so many things old seems new again, where the strong turn looks like the unpersuaded builds of our recycling center. For the most part, Pig's cast seems glued in to what chunk this is. Rough Harrison is so particularly expressionless that it's tough to tell whether he is bored or just bad. Only Sisto, whose demented Billy commanded the first season of 6 Feet Under, tries to make lemonade out of the movie's lemons with an enjoyable Tiki turn that regrettably bites the dust midway through. John S. Whiteley underdid lashing, Stan Winston elaborate makeup frequently impressible, and Elia Cameron predictably plosive score contribute to a noticeably weak ditch package. Production: a 20th Century Fox release of the Summit Entertainment and constant film presentation of a Constantinian film. Summit Entertaining production in association with New Market Capital Group, produced by Eric Fig, Robert Colzer, Stan Winston, Brian Gilbert, executive producer Mitch Horvitz, Patrick Weckenberg, Don Kermoni, Aaron Rader, co-executive producer Swain Abelling, Hagen Barron, directed by Rob Sackett, screenplay Alan McElroy. Crew: Camera John S. Battley, editor Michelle Royce, music Elia Campbell, music supervisor Randy Garrison, production designer Alicia Gibbon, art direction Alice Lamb. Wrong turn going into this movie, you will probably know in advance how things will pan out given its cabin in the woods starting point. So, what do we have here? Well, the group in question don't actually make it to their cabin, but as expected, it sees a group of good looking youngsters, including Eliza Dushku, Lindy Booth, Jeremy Sisto, and Kevin Seekers, going face to face with a bunch of disfigured, aberrant mountain fox who have a taste for human flesh in their words, the same as any holiday to the West Country in the UK. Of course, the young group do themselves no flavored by being utterly stupid. First and foremost is leaving their cars in the mid of the road without thinking about moving them to one side. More accidents will surely follow. Their decisions from that point onward continue to be logically unsound, and that's no wonder that a lot of grisly death follows. It stands to a reason that the script follows most of the usual tropes of the gender. If you have, you die. The person or people you expect to survive probably will not, and despite being inbred cannibals with developed intelligence, they are frequently able to outwit their prey. Call it hunter's instincts, I guess. Despite these reservations, it's not all bad. The scares are well structured, and the direction from Rob Schmidt is generally effective at building tension from quite a derivative idea. This does mostly amount to close-up on people's faces to make the horror all the more intimate and personal. But it works, so that's all that matters. It helps that the film doesn't stick around any longer than is absolutely necessary, but running for a lean 85 minutes. And the script doesn't hang about is pumping of the characters. This does mean, however, that there is a very little in the way of characterization of the victims. A possible side effect of this is you might only root for their survival because they are better looking than the cannibals. Without wishing to labor the pun, the reason for the cannibal's existence is also not fleshed out to a decent extent. There is a very minor efforts to provide some history to their existence in the intro credits, but otherwise it's something that is almost entirely ignored. Much like the role of the authorities in this matter, if that many people had gone missing in the area and the local sheriff's office has a high turnover of work-related death, then it stands to reason that somebody would have investigated and found them by now. Either that or the cannibals really are criminal masterminds, but the evidence shown in the film would indicate otherwise. At least there's some value in the production doing enough unique things to separate it from the pack. The only curiosity is how this franchise has scratched to 6 films to date, while the idea of just adding more cannibals to the extended family is a simplistic way of doing it. This appears to be the approach that has been taken. Time will tell if this was a good or bad idea. 31 Days of Horror Wrong Turn 2003. Yes, the saga's budget shrinks with every new outing, and the films lack anything playable for the non horror fan. They are still eminently watchable for gorehounds, especially their gruesome prologues, and give streaming platform content for the low expectation crowd. Yes, that even include the occasional film critic. The original Wrong Turn needs no qualification to recommend it. The 2003 film co-stars Eliza Dushku and Jeremy Sisto as friends whose West a camping plans go awry when they call together, take the wrong turn, give the inbred locals a mutated lord who slices and dice anyone who crosses their path. It's a survival 101 with plenty of creative kills along the way. The forest setting, shot near Toronto, offered a strong visual plate, and FX guru Stan Winston of Terminator fame does the rest. Winston's concocted the mutated makeup for the film's crew of villains. The indie film's production hardly went smoothly. Cast members suffered from more than just poison ivy outbreaks. One actor suffered a separated shoulder while another broke an ankle during an action sequence. The West Virginia Tourist Board may have hated the film, but Wrong Turn earned enough in its theatrical run to spark a straight-to-video franchise. One reason for skipping theater it's a show business, remember, and the move cut cost and froze Winston and co out. The film's budgets sharewelled over final with the sixth and final installment clock in at $1 million. 2 years ago, franchise creator Alan B. McElroy returned to the saga for a tepid report that cast aside much of what made the series such a guilty pleasure. Now that's a real wrong turn. Wrong Turn that is released in 2003 movie is about a slasher and horror gender. So getting lost in the wildness of West Virginia is not the best idea, particularly when it's home to an inbred family of Madros Hannibals as a group of young 20-something find out. Chris, played by Damon Harrison of Dexter, finds himself stuck in traffic on the way to an interview and decided to take a shortcut. You know what they say, a shortcut is the longest distance between two points. Coming to a fork in the road, he takes the wrong turn and crashes into a car standing idly on the country road and meets five standards forks. Coming to a fork in the road, he takes the idly on the country road and meets five standard forks. Their tires have been blown out thanks to deliberately placed barbed wire on the road. The leader of this gang is recently dumped Jesse, whose friends thought a trip to the woods could be a great way to cheer her up. Carly and Scott complete the main cast. As the aforementioned four main characters go for help, the cast begin to be picked off one by one. But unlike a lot of victims in horror movies, this group tries their damn hardest to stay alive. With plenty of core non-stop action and some eye-candy, Wrong Turn is a delicious treat for fans of the horror genre. The promising cast is made up for young actors that were up and coming in the early 2000s. Creepy and unsettling, it does what a horror movie is made to do, scare the audience while making the experience fun at the same time. A fun, scary horror movie started then a lot of the modern crap that possesses for horror. Wrong Turn 2003. Okay. Quick synopsis of Wrong Turn. A carload of 16s find themselves trapped in the woods of West Virginia, haunted down by cannibalistic mountain men grossly disfigures the generations of inbreeding. Intriguing, I don't think so, but could it be good? As far as horror movies go, this one will go down as just another movie where you are saying don't do that. It is also a little odd that this mystery of disfigured mountain men continues despite the fact that they live in the only cabin that is in these woods and they keep a graveyard of all the SUVs of the campers they have killed. Regardless of these two facts, the authorities have never been able to figure out these disappearances. To top the off, they are able to fall out of tires. He chopped with axes, shot in the head with arrows, beaten half to death, and still live. Outside the realm of possibility is the idea that has made horror movies forever, but they fall short when they add nothing new. Nothing new is exactly what Wrong Turn offers. The acting is not too bad, and even Scott, played by Jeremy Sisto, seems to have taken his acting classes from the infamous Jeff Goldblum by adding similar Vaticams that Goldblum added to Jurassic Park. Then you have beautiful women with Eliza Dushku and Emmanuelle Chriqui, everything a horror movie needs. The one place this movie stayed from the typical horror movie was no nudity, which really would have made it all too clutchy. So far that I am thankful. If you want to sit for 85 minutes to watch a horror movie that is not too great, then you can risk this one, but I would recommend against it. Wrong Turn is released in 2003 and it was the first movie in the franchise. So, the movie is directed by Rob Schmidt and produced by Stan Winston, Brian Gabbard, Eric Frey, Robert Kolzer, and it is written by Ellen B. McElroy, starring Desmond Harrington, Eliza Dushku, Jeremy Sisto, Emmanuelle Chriqui, music by Elia Cameron, cinematography by John S. Bartley, editing by Michelle Ross, and distributed by 20th Century Fox. Carly, Speedball, look at me. We are gonna get out of this. I swear to you, we are okay. We are going to find a road. We are gonna get to a town, and we are gonna home, and we are gonna get married. All right, and we are never going into the woods again. Scott Carly. Wrong Turn is a 2003 horror film directed by Rob Schmidt and written by Alan B. McElroy. The film stars Desmond Harrington, and Eliza Dushku. The film was shot in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and was followed by Wrong Turn 2 Dead End due to its commercial success. Six people find themselves trapped in the woods of West Virginia, hunted down by cannibalistic mountain men grossly disfigured through generations of inbreeding. Medical student Chris Flynn is on his way to a job interview and is driving through the mountains of West Virginia due to a chemical spill. In the road ahead, he decided to take a different road, leading him through an abandoned dirt road in the middle of the woods. He then crashes into a car stranded in the center of the roads. The car he crashed into belongs to a group of friends on a hiking trip, which includes Jesse. The car's tire was punctured by a barbed wire strung across the road. Francine and Yvonne stay with the cars while the remainder of the group goes for help, only to find an old cabin isolated in the West Tirehood woods. Meanwhile, the two who stayed behind are killed by the cannibals. The other discover that the cabin has many grisly horror inside, such as entrail in a fridge and body parts in the bathtub. The cabin is home to a group of cannibalistic mountain men who are horribly disfigured due to generations of inbreeding. The group realizes that the owners of the cabin will not be friendly. They hide within the house when the cannibals come back home. The group is forced to watch as the remains of Franchine are cut up and eaten. After the cannibals fall asleep, the group tries to escape but accidentally wake them. A confrontation erupts with the disfigured men and the group flee through the woods. They spend a couple of days running from the mountain men. They succeed in stealing the cannibal's truck, but Scott is killed by being shot with arrows. Then the remaining three survivors hit a dead end in the road and continue on foot. Meanwhile, the cannibals track them. Eventually, they end up at an old watchtower in hopes of finding a radio or rangers. They find a radio but get no response. Someone responds just as the cannibals reach the tower and alerts the cannibals to the group's whereabouts. The cannibals then pursues to burn down the tower, but the three escape by jumping into a nearby tree. Unfortunately, Carly is decapitated by an ox-wielding cannibal who climbed up the tree. The remaining two people, Chris and Jesse, make it out of the woods alive and end up destroying the cannibals and their cabin. However, at least one cannibal survives as shown in the ending credits. Cast: Eliza Dushku as Jesse, Bill Game, Desmond Harrington as Chris Flynn, Emmanuelle Chriqui as Carly Newman, Jeremy Sisto as Scott Kirby, Kevin Zanger as Yvonne Rose. The film receives mixed reviews from critics. It earned a 41% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Many criticize it as the film having no originality, taking its plot from other horror films such as The Hill Has Eyes and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The New York Post called it a dull, humorless slasher flick. The Boston Globe called it a satisfying blend of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Boot Camp, and maybe the Blair Witch Project. Wrong Turn is profoundly less than the sum of its influence. Positive reviewers consider it to be a fun, scary Friday night horror film. The Desperate Free Press calls it, while this movie doesn't have the rapt sensibilities of 1977, similarly plotted The Hills Have Eyes, it has decent performance and genuine suspense. Also, Glenn Level from the St. John's Mercury News praised the film, quoting Samix Mays as flick as the old-fashioned way by giving us a box seats to the unspeakable. The film also did moderately well at the box office, debuting at with 5.1 million. The film went on to earn a total of $28.7 million worldwide at the box office. The special featured on Wrong Turn or theatrical trailer features franchise Death Out Kids, extended waterfall sequence, audio commentary by director and lead actors. Soundtrack label Lashover Records. Release date June 2, 2003. Wrong Turn 2003. Directed by Rob Schmidt. Produced by Stan Winston. Wrong Turn is a 2003 exit American horror film directed by Rob Schmidt and written by Alan B. McElroy. The film stars Desmond Harrington, Eliza Dushku, Emmanuelle Chriqui, and Jeremy Sisto. This film has grossed $28.7 million in United States and also had a $12 million budget in United States. The visiting college students Harley Smith and Richard Stocker are beginning a rock climbing expedition in West Virginia, USA, known to both Rich and his good girlfriend. Hallie soon witness her boyfriend deceased dead body right below them and then witness more torment following more of her and more torment. Soon they're right after Hallie is beginning struggling before a ultimate climax. Hallie attempts to try and to escape to her and Rich car but trips over some ground out barbed wire before being killed after her boyfriend gets killed. They are still at the location. Chris Flynn, a medical student, is driving through the mountains of West Virginia, USA on his way to a recent new job interview not by the location due to a current chemical spill on the road. A ways ahead, he ends up taking a brand new different position route furthermore up some road. He stops instead back behind some area where he takes a detour with a dull road. Chris Flynn is now at an old, run-down gas station and meets some man there outside. The old man is not helpful, but Chris views a map detailing another possible route that heads straight toward his building. Chris decided to take the road and he is driving. He crashes into a Range Rover stranded in the middle of the road. The car belongs to a group of friends on a routing hiking trip. Jesse Burlingame, which happens to be the name of protagonist in Stephen King's 1992 horror novel Caroline's Game, Eliza Dushku, Carly Newman, her fiancé Scott Kirby, and a couple, Yvonne Rose and Francine Sellerides. Jesse finds a piece of barbed wire in the area that was tied to a tree across the road after their tires were punctured inside. Jesse, Carly, and Scott go to the woods to go find help. Chris joins them while Yvonne and Francine stay with everyone. Scott's later on Jesse and Chris befriend one another as Francine and Yvonne have make out kisses. Soon thereafter, Francine notices that he is missing and she goes into the woods to look for him, not modeling that Jesse and Chris have notified that a fire is burning soon. As Francine ventures further into the woods, she finds his sneaker and his severed ear. As Francine stumbles back, she realizes what is going on. In shock, she screams and is still shocked to know what is happening when a figure wraps barbed wire around her mouth, tearing it open and killing her. As Chris, Jesse, Carly, and Scott try to find help, they find an older rust cabin. They go into the cabin and discover miscellaneous objects and human body parts in both a fridge and also the bathroom. They are horrified and try to escape, but they hear the outbands are coming back and are forced to hide. Scott and Carly hide in what seems like a room filled with atoms from throughout the elder years. Chris and Jesse are forced to hide underneath one of some furniture and sheets, and three cannibalistic mountain men, all whom are extremely disfigured, enter the cabin and bring in Franchine's dead body. Chris, Jesse, Carly, and Scott gently watch in horror as her body is bluntly carved and cut open and messily eaten. As the cannibals fall asleep, the friends silently escape. However, Sawtooth awakens up to Chris and Jesse and alerts the other cannibals and begins to find and try to consumes Jesse and Chris and others throughout the area and building. The group climbs up to a nearby clearing with many cars, which they realize are the cars of the cannibal's victim. Chris makes a diversion and shot in the leg. Scott saves him by using himself as a decoy, allowing Jesse and Carly to steal the killer's truck. Ivan is found dead, so Chris gets into the truck and the friends drive down a path close by trying to find Scott. Carly sees Scott in the forest as Scott starts to make their way toward the truck. He is shot 3 times in the back with arrows and is killed. An, an arrow almost hits the friends in the truck, although soon Chris asks Jesse Bilgame to drive away and don't stop. The cannibals pick up Stock's dead body and take his dead carcasses away from Jesse's and others. Chris, Jesse, and Carly hit a dead end in the road and have to continue on foot as Jesse helps out a later Chris. Comforting Carly about her loss, they find an old watchtower and begin to climb up with Jesse and find a radio and choose is to call for help. But do not get a response. Later they see the cannibals who are armed with torches and reaching the foot of the tower. The radio starts responding to their car, alerting the cannibals. Carly tries to make an urgent response but is interrupted when Three Finger tries to climb into the tower. Three Finger tries to get through the panel on the floor of the tower but is stomped on by Chris in front of Jesse. The cannibal then sets the tower on fire. Chris, Carly, and Jesse escapes by jumping out of the window into a nearby tree. They begin to climb up, but Three Fingers starts to climb up a tree near them. Chris and Jesse begin to climb higher as Carly starts on a branch, too afraid to climb further. Chris and Jesse make it to another tree, but Three Fingers sneak up behind Carly and chops her head in half with an axe, and her body falls through the trees. As Chris and a sobbing Jesse watch in horror, they decide to avenge Carly and trick Three Finger to get hit by a branch and fall out of the tree, giving the last two survivors a chance to escape. They escape from the cannibals and hide in a cave near a waterfall until both Jesse and Chris wake up, where Chris comforts Jesse. Just as they find a road out of the woods, the mountain men fight them and push Chris down the hill and capture Jessie and take her back to their cabin. Chris survives the fall and meets a police officer, but before he is able to convince the officer of what is happening, the police officer is soon killed when an arrow shot from the woods hit him in the eye. Chris attempts to drive away in the car but does not have the keys, so instead hitches a ride underneath the car as the cannibal drives us back to the cabin. One eye in the cabin, Jesse, Bilgman, and the cannibal soon begin looking around as Jesse stares at the cabin's wall and ceiling. Jesse is tied to a bed and gagged with a belt, begging for help. Outside, the cannibal in the police car arrive with Chris still under and close by. After the cannibal goes inside with the officer's body, Chris gets down from the bottom of the truck back inside as Jesse is about to be killed. The front of the cabin is caught on fire and flames start flying. Soon the front area and the front door is smashed through by Chris, who is now driving the officer's cars. He drives straight into the cabin and smashed into one eye, and the cannibal is pinned under the police car. When Chris unties Jesse, he is attacked by Sawtooth. Jesse shoots Sawtooth in the back of the neck with his own bow and arrow. Jesse and Chris also fight Three Finger and finish him off by hitting him with an axe straight into his body. Chris and Jesse notice that the cannibals are still staring and are alive, and Jesse and Chris quickly go outside. Chris has only one shotgun shell left, which he shoots at the police car's gas cartoon, blowing up the cabin with the cannibal still inside.
Chris and Jesse driving the cannibal's own truck stop back at the gas station. Chris, badly injured, gets out of the truck and takes the map to the road which lead to the cannibal's cabin so no one will ever go into the woods again. Chris gets back into the truck as Jesse drives down the road and the credits roll.
The credits are interrupted by a scene showing a deputy sheriff investigating and scene picking up over the remains of the destroyed cabin. Three fingers who survived the explosions comes up behind the deputy officers. The deputy turned to see a shadowy figure holding an axe, and then Three Fingers' face is visible as he nods and hollers. The scene fades to black as his insane laughter is heard as the credits continue to roll. Two soundtracks were released, one contained the original film score and the other contained some non-popular music. Wrong Turn 2003 received mixed reviews with some selected cast and well-established film producers. The film flourished within the horror community and all around the globe. The film later received six films along with two sequels, Wrong Turn 2 Dead End and Wrong Turn 3 Left 4 Dead, two prequel Wrong Turn 4 Bloody Beginnings and Wrong Turn 5 Bloodlines, and two reboots, Wrong Turn 6 Lost Resort and Wrong Turn 2021. Wrong Turn 2003, Chris crashes into a car load of other young people and the group of stranded motorists is soon lost in the woods of West Virginia, where they are haunted by three cameless mountain men who are grossly disfigured by corrosives of inbreeding. Wrong Turn 2003, everyone dies but Jesse Burlingame, Eliza Dushku, and Chris Finn, Desmond Harrington. They do kill the bad guys and do so by setting their house on fire and it blows up. During the credits, a police officer pulls up to the burnt down house and is killed by the smallest mountain man who supposedly survives, hinting at a sequel. Continuity mistake in the scene where Carly Scott, Chris, and Jesse are approaching the house in the woods. The shot from the back shows Jesse crossing her arms and leaving them there, and Scott behind Carly. But a shot from the front shows Jesse arms down by her side and Scott holding Carly. Famous quote is Scott, okay, who lives here? Carly, I don't know, but can you help me find the bathroom? Scott, baby, I think this is the bathroom. Question is this Wrong Time series based on some true events or it is just a fiction? If true events, what are they? Just fiction based, if anything, on mere urban legends. Wrong Turn, the real inspiration for the movie, explained. Wrong Turn franchise based on true story of Sunny Bean embrace extreme gore with a few characters surviving in the series. The legend of Sonny Bean inspired not just Wrong Turn but also other horror works like The Hill Have Eyes and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Horror movies often draw from real events for added terror, even supernatural films like The Exorcist and Nightmares on Elm Street. Wrong Turn follows a group of friends who embark on a road trip through the remote wilderness of West Virginia. While navigating the back roads and take a wrong turn and end up stranded in a desolate area as they attempt to find their way back, they encounter a series of gruesome and deadly traps set by a family of cannibalistic mountain dwellers. The friends quickly realize they are being haunted and must fight for their survival against these ruthless adversaries. As tension rises and the group is picked off one by one, they must rely on their instincts and resourcefulness to escape the terrifying situation. The film blends elements of horror and thriller, creating a tense atmosphere as the characters confront both the physical dangers of the wilderness and sinister forces lurking within it. Eliza Dushku plays Jesse Bilgame, a determined survivor who leads a group of friends through a harrowing escape from cannibalistic mountain men in the West Virginia wilderness. Jeremy Sisto plays Scott, a friend in the group of young adults who become stranded in the West Virginia woods, facing deadly traps set by cannibalistic mountain men. Emmanuelle Chriqui plays Carly, a friend in a group stranded in the woods, facing deadly traps and cannibalistic mountain men. In the ending of Round Turn, the main characters find themselves trapped in a deadly game of survival against a group of cannibalistic mutants in the West Virginia woods. As the tension escalates, the remaining survivors devise a plan to escape the horrifying situation. After a series of harrowing encounters, they manage to confront the mutants, leading to a climactic showdown. The resolution occurs when the protagonist, having lost several friends to the brutal attack, finally confronts the last of the mutants. In a desperate attempt to survive, the protagonist uses their surroundings to outsmart the mutant, resulting in a fight struggle. Ultimately, the protagonists manage to escape the clutches of the cannibals, symbolizing a hard-fought victory against the monstrous threat. The acting resources the film's theme of survival and instinctual fight against primal fears. The protagonist's escape serves as a commentary on the resilience of the human spirit when faced with unimaginable horror. The film concludes ambitiously, leaving the audience with a lingering sense of dread, suggesting that the horror of the woods may not be entirely vanquished and the cycle of violence could continue. Review of Wrong Turn. Every year, someone decided that we have not seen a 70s style horror suspense film for a while and decided it would be cool to make one. This year's offender is Wrong Turn, a poorly constructed parasite of Texas Chainsaw Scare, Deliverance, Cheaper Creepers, and the classic X Files episode Home. A family of inbred mutants is trapping and killing traveler on a little juice road in the wilds of West Virginia. Which begs the question, if this is a little juice road, how do they get too many victims? But that's just one more little bit of logic you'll just have to check at the door when the lights go down. Chris Finn, played by Desmond Harrington, is a medical student on his way to Lake for an important interview. When an accident blocked the main highway, Chris decided to take an alternate road seen on an old map at a dilapidated coast station. Soon, Chris finds his classic Mustang colliding with a back end of a Range Rover containing Eliza Dushku, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and next season's True Calling, and a bunch of kids you have probably never heard of it, as I like to call them, the League of Future Victims. Dakshu spent the first half of the film spotting that Slayer true she perfected during her time on Buffy. It gave me some hope that she would come out swinging, taking the inbred on in and all or nothing steel cake match. Unfortunately, she gets to act like the typical guard interested who has to be rescued by the end of the film by a character that has so much damage that it's hard to believe he is conscious. Let anyone able to play Indiana Jones and hold on the undercarriage of a sheriff's SUV. Wrongdown does have a few genuinely creepy moments during the course of its thankfully short running time, mostly thanks to the work of Stan Winston, not a great talent when it comes to picking which script he is going to be associated with, but an enormous talent when it comes to creating creatures that are the stuff nightmare are made of. That little kids for cleverness all grew up and eaten tourist, something we will not see in these television ads for West Virginia Department of Tourism. Wrongtown should have made a hard left straight into the video rental bins. Reviews from the different audience. The first time I will give review to all old Wrong Turn movies. All I can say is these are the best. First time I have watched Wrong Turn when I was 11 years old, which is 2008. Here in the Philippines, we are still using DVD player, and first time we watch it with my uncles to our grandma house. I miss those moments. I watched this time is part 3, the best horror criminal movie ever for me. Until when I was in HSI, tried to mention this movie name wrong turn if they familiar with it, but finally they are because every time I mention this before no one cannot relate me and my brother favorite horror I cannot forget it after we watch it. Since our place is the farm of near in the jungles, we imagine that it has wrong turn in there. Then back to story my classmates same experience and thinking every time they hear wrong turn, even on social media they make a memes pictures with overnight camping hub then they edited a wrong turn criminal PPLR. We are favorite that horror criminal movies plus all the actors are the best plus they are handsome CC and hot. Thanks you writer of this amazing imagination and to all directors and staff. Thank you all. I watched all those wrong turn parts, even the new one which is 2021, but still gold and legendary for us in the old. Very scary and my soul are jumping to scare here in the Philippines. Wrong turn movies are famous here if you don't know. Looking forward to new one again. Really a nice slasher thriller suspense movie. I don't believe slasher movies are horror movies, but I can say slasher movies are one of the best entertaining genre. Wrong Turn Part 1 is a fun to watch suspenseful thriller slasher movie with good acting, good story and characters. Movies like Blackwater, Running Turn series Friday the 13th, Halloween, Saw, Anaconda 1 and 2, etc. have one common thing and that in these movies entertain us a lot. Talking about Wrong Turn 1, it's more than what we expected. Actor did well job mainly the ones who portrayed Chris, Jesse and Carly. Thriller is great and I think the best part of this movie is its thriller. It bounds with us from the beginning and becomes more and more interesting till the end. And that is the reason this franchise is so famous all around the globe. The story is simple but nice, not extra creative or whatever, simple story with a lot of suspense. And I gave this movie 5 out of 5 stars, not because I liked it very much, but this is one of the best films ever made in Hollywood. No. I gave this movie 5 out of 5 because it's a popcorn movie which we can watch anytime when we are free. A fine, clean cut, time pass movie, but I can say it's one of the best slasher, thriller, suspense movies. So I really enjoy watching this fantastic and mind-blowing movie. Eliza and Desmond looks great together. Their pair is awesome. I love it usually. Most of the horror slasher movies was not based on original logical ideas or reality. They are fake which is not usually happen in our real life. The acting, story, actions, everything is outstanding, especially the acting and personality of Chris Sean. Really very smart, intelligent, brave and caring. It is very interesting to watch when Chris came back to the house of monsters only to save Jesse, who was his friend from only 2 days, while he has the option of running away and also he didn't even know where she was alive or not. I wish every girl have this type of partner in her life who save her life by playing on his own life. I fully recommend it. I think it is very underappreciated and deserves more credit than it got. I myself am not a fan of slasher gore body horror, but this is one was well written and even believable. If not a bit topical, lol if had a good mixture of wellness, suspense and psychological element which makes this a good gem. Unfortunately, since it's shadowed by absolutely terrible and insulting sequel, I can only give 4 stars. This movie is so good, honestly, so much better than I expected. I wanted to go to bed because I was so late, but my eyes were stuck to the screen. It literally felt like 5 movies in one. I thought it ended like 4 times, but it just kept going and getting better. It's nothing that you would expect from it by looking at it. You think it's going to be one thing, but it's definitely not like any movies I have seen before. This movie was chaotic and intense, but I accidentally really enjoyed every part of it. I have seen a lot of scary movies, and this one was not necessarily scary, but it was very suspenseful and really interesting. I would 100% watch it again. It's worth the watch. Do it, just do it. Also, the guy at the end is kind of good. The AVG, I really enjoyed this movie when it came out back in the day, and we watched it again with the kids. They also enjoy it a lot. Just sorry the others that followed got so sexual, but enjoy this with your teen 8 out of 10. I am not a big fan of the slasher horror movie genre, so on a whim decided to watch this movie. It's actually a pretty good, plenty of jump scares and edge of your seat moments kept me interested and definitely made me think twice about venturing into the woods in West Virginia. The early 2000s, don't get me wrong, there was some real good stuff in that era. Shaun of the Dead, the others, The Ring, Final Destination, My Dog Soldier, Ginger Snaps. There's a good stuff in any era, but this was also the period that saw the first Scream movie, Jason in Space. Busta Rhymes fight Michelle Myers and everything started getting a remake, often referred to as the post Scream era, not because every movie felt the need to have a meta commentary on the gender. That's always been an accurate take because no one know what to do next. 2003 bought a strong turn. I cannot really tell you that a no would do either, but it does commit to simple, more straightforward story than you had expect. It doesn't take many risks along the way, but it does find some fun in its inbred cannibal monster chase. It beats a fine cast and some good creature effect. Kill and chase scene keep the piece moving well enough. The biggest knock against Strongtown is that there's nothing especially memorable about it. As time goes by, movie starts to be jaggered by how they hold up more and more. Wrong turns hold up well. So many movies from the era look and feel dated, primarily the ones with an abundance of CGI that it really shows what some makeup and practical effect can do for a film's longevity. The Cannibals, Three Finger, One Eye, and Sawtooth don't suffer the same fate as CGI monsters of the early 2000s because they are performed by actors in kick ass makeup design. They are probably the most memorable thing about the picture compared to the virtual reality sequence in Jason X released years earlier, just one of many examples. The perpetual motion of the story also helps Strongton work for modernize it, wastes little time getting into the action and sustain it throughout the movie. Our characters meet after a car accident, giving us six young people to watch try to survive. As mentioned, the movie doesn't take risk, so you are probably going to guess who will be left standing pretty quickly. You can probably guess the order they fill in based solely on how they are introduced or familiar their faces are. Still, predictability doesn't hurt a movie when the journey can provide thrills. Wrong Turn does. Those familiar faces include Eliza Dushku, Jeremy Sistu, and Emmanuelle Chriqui. The acting in Wrong Turn is, no pun intended, a cut above most slasher of the time. Sure, they all went for faces the CW would cast in a teen dramedy if they could, and in some cases did, but Wrong Turn gets some of the better ones. There's some star quality in the bunch that shines through the dirty, bloody nature of the film. The standard sequence in the film involves our heroes hiding in the cannibal's cabin as their friend is dismembered in front of them. It's mostly an implied dismembered. They were not ready to go full art the clown, but it really works as a frightening piece of business, the kind of horror that will always play to an audience regardless of era. From there, it's a standard cat and mouse or cats and mice game through the woods. The cannibals get home in the environment, the intruders lost and running from their lives, standard as it may be. It works like the creature effect and cabin scene. It will always work by keeping things moving and focusing on a
Simple, familiar story. Wrong turn accidentally unlock the secret to Legativi, a lake of risk. Keep it from concentration as a classic. The familiar pursuit and in camera magic will not allow it to become outdated either. If you are looking for extended chases with memorable monster disputating innocent victims, Wrong Time gives you what you want. More importantly, if you are looking for a movie from the early 2000s that holds up due to its practical effect, fluid kills, and fine pacing, Ronton gives you that too. We are not always so lucky when it came to the early August. Wrong Turn is a surprisingly straightforward movie in a post-Grimm's horror world. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, focusing its effort on an extended cat and mouse survival game. It does what it's tried well enough to be entertaining, but leaves you wishing it had more ambition for its era. However, Wrong Turn is and hold up better than most. Wrong Turn is the movie. It's a slasher and horror released in 2003, and the running time of the movie is 125 minutes. So this was a really entertaining movie and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a refreshing to see an original idea put on film, especially when it's horror drama movie. I must admit that the actresses in this movie really made me feel like I was turning into a cannibal myself. Highly recommend it. So this movie is really fearful and scary, one of the best and full of strong efforts in order to save oneself from dangerous woods. The knowledge that I got from this movie is that we should not spread our wings to fly up in sulpers unless we know the height of sky. We should not touch the things we don't know about. It was a good thrill, but though I just found some scenes a bit too much, like killing and smashing a head with a log. I think it's too much that I found. Maybe not. Also, the guy that was paid to help the father, supposed to be an expert on hunting or something. Why did he has to die so quickly when he is supposed to be an expert? They should have prolonged his death a bit. Just an opinion.